Nick Shelf.
Hi, it's Jason Gorber from Canada. Mr. Miller, congratulations on the film. Welcome back. This is a story about storytelling. It's narrative about narratology. I'm wondering if Idris and Tilda, you've worked on the biggest canvases and the small, intimate ones. If you could talk about, as performers, when we tell these stories, from you as performers, what the differences, the subtleties that you can get on the biggest screen, or some of the bigger performances that sometimes you can get on the smallest. And Mr. Miller, the same thing. When you're making a film like this, you are trying to tell the story of us watching your own film. I'm just wondering how you managed to not lose yourself within the artifice of storytelling and make sure that you're gifting us with something that actually works from the audience's perspective.
Ooh.
That's 3 questions.
Yeah.
3 wishes. Well, I mean, my province is not the small screen, but the biggest one possible. I'm proud to say that's my flag, and I fly it. But I know that this big screen here is possibly the most beautiful one on the planet, and we are so proud always to bring our work here and to have that sound system. That's the temple. And the thing about that big screen and other maybe smaller big screens is that you can see everything. And so as a performer, it's this portal to, it's a very forensic space, and the detail that one has to be aware of being picked up on a big screen. You know, you woe betide anybody who thinks that the camera ever lies. Working with someone like George, who, I mean, with this project, it was very interesting because I made a mistake with when George said, this is a little film. We're going to make a little film. It's not Mad Max, don't worry. It's going to be a little film. I was kind of hoping it was going to be Mad Max, but anyway. It's going to be a little chamber piece, a conversation between 2 beings, and it's not actually going to be big. It's huge, as you know. I mean, what I saw on that enormous screen last night was quite overwhelming. But what he manages to do is keep it small and keep it real. And so not only, I would suggest, in the scenes that he works with the Jinn and Alethea, which is so precise and so melodic and varied, and, you know, one's kind of noodling through an argument all the time, but also with these big set pieces. There's reality there with these extraordinary actors from all over the place bringing that reality. So as a performer, it doesn't matter whether it's a big old battle or whether it's a small conversation in a pair of tattling dressing gowns in a hotel room. It really doesn't matter. That needing to be anchored and needing to be authentic, that's the task. And working with George, who knows that better than almost anybody, is such a privilege and an honor.
Oh, thank you. Well, the very first, I think the best way to answer the question is the very first conversation I had with Idris was when he said, listen, I've read the script and I'd really like to do the film. He said, but I would love to shoot this backstories, the flashbacks first, so that when I'm actually in the hotel room telling Tilda, call her Alethea, telling Tilda that I've, to some extent, I have been through those experiences. And the second thing he said, if you remember, was that I would like to actually film me saying that, even if you don't use the picture. At least I'm telling somebody a story. I'm telling Tilda the story. And that, I think, goes to answer your question. That's basically how it happened. Up until that conversation, it never occurred to me. It's the most obvious thing to do now. And I think to the extent that that sort of works, the bouncing between the 2-story works, I think that's the main reason. So we didn't see you until we'd finished everything else. Yeah.
Just to echo Tilda, I think from a performer's perspective, there's very little difference between, you know, a big scale movie and a small movie in terms of performance. However, there are some landscapes, realms, scenery that require slight amplification as a performer versus something that feels very real and real time. And, you know, calibrating that may be something that I pay attention to, but usually in terms of what our drive is as a performer, it's the same engine.
That's a great question, thank you. How do you write a narrative about a narrative and then present it to people, which also continues the narrative, right? How did we do it? We talked endlessly. We did. I hesitate to say this, but one of the benefits of COVID was that when Tilda and Idris came to Sydney, Australia, they had to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. And so we had 2 weeks of uninterrupted rehearsal time with them over Zoom, and we just talked and talked and talked. And George and I, as we sat shoulder to shoulder writing the script, also spent years in conversation about the nature of storytelling, about how we make meaning in our lives through telling each other stories, through telling ourselves stories. And it was a beautiful experience, and in sharing with the audience now, that story will continue to unfold.